East of Eden by John Steinbeck is one of those books that literally everyone seems to love, but I don't really understand why. It sounds like a lot of this book is based on the Bible, which is appealing to me, but Christian fiction is like the least popular book genre out there. So what makes everyone love this one so much? And when I tried to figure it out by reading reviews, everything was really vague and just said that it was amazing or mind-blowing, or, and I quote, a high-priced, high-quality buffet with a lot of different stations. So this week I'm going to be reading this book in an attempt to answer the question, what makes this book so good to so many people? So I feel like I can't accurately judge this book unless I actually finish it. So in the chance that I don't like it, I want to make sure that I'm still keeping up a good pace for finishing and that it's not going to take me like months and months to do it because this is 600 pages. So I figured the best way to keep up a good pace with this is that I created a number wheel on my phone to decide how many pages I read per day. There's a lot of different numbers on here, but they go all the way from just 5 pages to 200, which is a number I hope I never get because that's a lot for me. So I'm going to spin to see how many pages I read today. 30 pages to read today. Okay, that's not so bad, but that's still a decent amount. So I'm gonna start reading now. It's the next morning. I'm ready to start reading East of Eden again, but first I need to figure out how many pages I'm reading today. Yesterday, after I had finished my 30 pages, and it actually took me a long time, I was really genuinely wondering how I would possibly do 200 pages, and I still don't know what I'm gonna do if I get 200, just because, again, this is a slower book and I read through it pretty slowly, so I think I'm gonna have to take the entire day to read 200 pages if I do that. So let's see what we get for today. It's only 10. That's really relieving. Honestly, if I want to read more, I might actually go above 10, but it's so nice to know that I only have to do 10. I am thinking maybe it would be smart to modify this wheel a little bit because the whole point in doing this is so I can read a lot each day, and I guess it doesn't really work if I'm only reading 10 to 30 pages per day. So I might change that a little bit. So I ended up having a really nice day reading through these 10 pages. It was very simple and easy, but since I still wasn't very far into the book, I felt like I couldn't give any strong opinions on it yet. I still wasn't sure what made the book so great to people, but I wasn't disliking it either. And during this day, I also modified my wheel a bit, which was going to quickly make this challenge a lot harder, but it was also something I really wanted to do because I was ready to read more of this book each day. I was just still hoping I wouldn't get that 200. It's day 3 and it's time to spin the wheel again. I actually made a new wheel. It's a modified version. Now the lowest page count is 30 pages, and again, it goes all the way up to 200. So we're going to be getting into some real serious reading from here on out. 80 pages. I'm definitely gonna be having to read for a lot of time today, but that's good. I'm actually excited to do it, and honestly, I'm just happy it's not 200. Alright, so I've only read about 15 pages so far, so I still have a bit more to do today, but I thought I would talk a little bit about it just because I haven't said any opinions on the story yet. Obviously, I knew that this book was a classic. I knew that John Steinbeck was a really great writer, so I did kind of already know in a way that this book was going to be good because it's a classic, but I guess more of my curiosity about its popularity had to do with what makes it so big, especially right now. I feel like a lot of people are talking about it. So far, I'm still trying to figure it out. Obviously, it's a great book. It's really well written, and the story is so interesting. It's a classic that doesn't really feel like a classic. It's much more modern, and it is really good so far. He writes characters really well, and their emotions and their relationships between each other like so well. I mentioned a little bit before, but it's set in California, and the setting is so beautiful. I'm actually coming across a lot of quotes that I almost want to underline. They're so well written, but I also don't think I've really come to the biblical parts of this story yet. I know it's based loosely on the Cain and Abel story, and I don't think I'm there yet. So I'm so curious once I get into that part of the story how I'm gonna feel about it and what might change about it, because I don't think the appeal to this book isn't just that it's a decently well-written classic, you know? Like, I feel like there's something more to it, and I'm excited to figure out what that is. And I'm happy I have a lot of pages to read today to try to uncover that. one of my favorite lines that I found so far is, "The proofs that God does not exist are very strong, but in lots of people they say they're not as strong as just the feeling that he does." Yesterday I made really good progress in this book. I did hit my 80 pages, but it was very hard. It was like a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. I think I mentioned yesterday that there's a few quotes that I really liked and I wanted to like remember. So I decided to get a pen out and start underlining them, and then I also found some little flags, and so I've been marking things up as well. I've never really annotated a book before other than like the Bible, and it's actually a lot of fun. Anyway, if you can't tell, I am liking this book a lot. So I'm very excited to read a lot today, and right now I'm gonna figure out how many pages I'm gonna be doing. 100. Okay, so we're like going up very steadily. I'm happy it's not 200. It's gonna be hard, but I'm kind of excited to do it anyway. I took a little pause from reading to do something very important, and no, I don't have time for this, but I'm doing it anyway. I felt the need to read the Cain and Abel story in the book of Genesis before I move on with East of Eden. Not that everyone has to do this in order to read that book, but I just want to be really familiar with the story. I want to understand everything that John Steinbeck is trying to say through this metaphor, so I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, so basically they're two brothers, they're Adam and Eve's sons. They both bring gifts or offerings to God. One of them, Abel, brings the best of everything he has, and the other one, Cain, brings just some of his crops. Because Abel gave his best to God and Cain didn't, God accepts Abel's gift and doesn't accept Cain's. And then later Cain gets really angry and kills Abel. The verse that's kind of sticking out to me the most that I feel like relates to this a lot is when God says to Cain, "Sin is crouching at your door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master." That's a hard thing to do, and it's something Cain clearly isn't able to do in this story, and a lot of people haven't been able to do it yet in East of Eden either. So I'm going to keep this whole story in mind as I continue reading through this book. It is really interesting how now I realize so much of it is inspired by the Bible, so I'm really curious to see where the story goes from here, and again how it appeals to so many people who both are and aren't Christians. It is much later. I ate lunch and then I took kind of a long break because I just really needed a break. But now I'm getting back into reading. I'm at 60 pages now, so I only have 40 pages left. So like the villain of this story, the woman who's I think is supposed to represent Eve, the narrator calls her a monster a lot of the time. And to kind of like explain what made her worse than everyone else, this is what he said. "Maybe we all have in us a secret pond where evil and ugly things germinate and grow strong. Might it not be that in the dark pools of some men, evil grows strong enough to wriggle out over the fence and swim free? Would not such a man be our monster? Are we not related to him in our hidden water?" I think basically he's saying that even though this woman is the villain and considered a monster, there's characteristics of her in everyone. And just because most people are capable of suppressing that evil side doesn't mean that this villain or this monster of the book is that much different from everyone else just because she failed to suppress it, I guess. Which goes back to that verse I saw in Genesis about being the master of your own sin. Everyone has it, everyone has some darkness in them, but the trick is being able to like control it and be the master of it, I think is what all this is trying to say. The next couple of days I was pretty busy and I wasn't able to film that much, but I still tried to read as much as I could. The first day I spun and got 70 pages, and although I read some on this day, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't reach all 70. The next day I got 30 and finally reached part 3 of the book. Then I got 30 again, but it was so close to landing on 200 and that freaked me out a little. Anyway, on this day I actually took a little road trip and I was able to read a lot in the car. I'm not even really sure how much I read, but it was definitely way more than I needed. So I haven't been filming as much as I wanted to the past couple of days. They've been a little bit busy, but the last 2 days I've been reading as many pages I've needed to read and then some. I didn't film that much, but most of my reading was like late at night anyway. But you'll be pleased to hear that I'm already halfway through this book. Actually, technically a little over halfway. I've been underlining and annotating everything, and I have a lot of thoughts and things I want to share about this book today. But first, I'm going to spin the wheel. So I just got 200. Okay, so that'll be interesting for today, especially because I'm starting this at almost 11, and that's gonna be a lot of reading for me. But I'm not gonna change it. I'm not gonna respin. I'm gonna try and do 200 pages today. Actually, you know what? I am gonna do 200 pages today. I know 200 pages isn't technically like that much for a normal, like modern, fast-paced book, but this book is completely different. Like I was saying before, even 30 pages takes me a long time to read, so 200 is gonna be very difficult. However, I'm gonna do it. When I first started reading this book, I was really confused as to what made people so obsessed with it. I was enjoying it from the beginning, but I didn't understand what made people go on and on, like raving about this book. I didn't know what made it so mind-blowing or amazing, and it's taken me a little bit, but I think I'm finally starting to understand it. And I think all of these flags so far are kind of like proof as to how I'm starting to feel the same way. This book is so focused on biblical themes, and specifically the story about Cain and Abel, and the difference between what makes someone a good person and what makes someone a bad person. It specifically talks a lot about that verse that I noticed and I mentioned earlier about watching out for sin, and if you're not on guard, it'll take over. There's a whole chapter where they go into depth on this line and researching it, and they even talk about like different translations. My battery died earlier and I kind of forgot what I was saying, but I think the point was just that this book is doing such a good job at explaining like complex biblical concepts in a way that makes sense and is super like metaphorical through the characters in the story. And it's one of those books that I feel like just makes you think a little harder, and there's so many great quotes in this. It's really good, and there's still so much more left to go, so I'm so excited to see where the story goes from here. Something I kind of forgot to mention here was the answer to my main question from the beginning. Christian fiction is like the least popular book genre out there, so what makes everyone love this one so much? Anyway, I did eventually figure out that there is one very specific answer to this complicated question, and I do eventually explain all of this by the time I finish the book. It is true that we are weak and sick and quarrelsome, but if that's all we ever were, we would, millenniums ago, have disappeared from the face of the earth. A few remnants of fossilized jawbones, some broken teeth and a strata of limestone would be the only mark man would have left of his existence in the world. It's a little bit later. I've just been reading in this room for a while. I'm at about 40 pages, but I do think the more I read this book, the faster I read it, so I do think I'm reading quicker than I did when I first started reading this book, and there's still a lot to go. I'm not even a fourth of the way through, and there's not that much time to do it in, so I gotta get back to reading. Okay, so I've read another like 30 pages, so I'm a little over 70 pages into reading for today. I haven't taken too many breaks though, although I think I'm about to take one. The story is getting a little bit crazy though. The two boys in this book who are supposed to kind of resemble Cain and Abel are growing up, and it's so interesting to see their two very different personalities and the way that they just interact and go about the world and some of the things that are going on between the two of them. So I'm gonna take a break, relax for a little bit, rest my eyes, and then get up to at least 100 pages, and then I'll talk a bit more about what I've read so far. It's a little bit later. I have hit 100 pages now, which means I'm halfway through my reading for today. I'm 400 pages into the whole book, so technically I only have 200 left until I'm done with the book. And like I've talked about a lot already, this book is a lot about the like evil inside people and the choice people have to, I guess, like submit to it or go against it, if that makes sense. And you see that in the generations of people in this book. Like, this book takes place over a long period of time. You see that in one person, and then you see that in that person's child, and then that person's child, and it's sort of like a cycle that repeats itself. But a scene that I just came across that I loved so much, one of the boys, the one who's supposed to like represent Cain in the story, so like the bad twin, he, I guess, just kind of realizes that he is the way that he is. Everyone else before him was kind of oblivious to it, and so he says a prayer that's really sweet, basically asking God to make him not mean anymore. And he's just a little kid, so he doesn't really know what's happening. He basically is just saying that he doesn't really understand why he is the way that he is, but he's asking to not be that way. He's asking for it to stop, which is something that the past evil characters in this book weren't able to do, and it seems like this kid is the first one who's actually able to do it. We'll see if it works throughout the rest of the story, I don't know. Although this was such a hard challenge, reading 200 pages in one day, I was really enjoying myself the whole way through. Obviously, there were some moments that I got kind of tired of reading, but in those moments I would take a break, and then soon after I'd be ready to go right back to reading. I was so invested in the story at this point and loving everything about it, and I felt like I was finally starting to understand what all the hype was about. I finished off this day reading in my bed. At this point, I only had about 50 pages left to go, and I was determined to do it no matter how late I had to stay up. So I just laid there for a long time, and eventually I finally finished. It's the next day. I can't believe I read 200 pages yesterday. I'm honestly shocked I ended up actually doing that. And the amazing thing is that I only have 100 pages left until I'm finished with this book. So I'm actually not even gonna spin the wheel today. The reason why I was doing that in the first place was to stay on a good pace with reading, even if I didn't like the book. But obviously I know I'm loving it now, and I'm definitely going to finish it. So I'm gonna let myself finish out these last 100 pages just kind of at my own pace. Although I'm very invested at this point, and I have a feeling I could do it today. I've finished reading East of Eden and I want to say so much about it, but I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say towards the end of the book I was underlining basically every other line. My original question about why everyone loves this book so much definitely got answered several times throughout reading. Obviously it has a beautiful setting and Steinbeck writes with like deep philosophical meaning behind every single line, and just the overall quality of the book is a big part in what makes it so good. But the one very unique thing about this book that I think makes it stand out so much is that he takes a very simple theological concept of good and evil and our choice between the two and like dissects it. This concept applies to everyone, which is why I think the book isn't just appealing to Christians. It doesn't matter who you are, we all struggle to suppress our own sin, but it's so hopeful to remember that we all have the ability to rule over it if we want to. I just highly recommend this book. It has something for everyone in it, kind of like a high quality, high price buffet.